Welcome to the Wild Holy Podcast. This is Faith.
And I'm Stephanie, and this is Stories of Spirit Beyond the Expected. So, this is our premiere podcast episode, and I thought it might be nice, Faith, to talk about why we are interested in this topic and what we're hoping folks will get out of this podcast. So, I'm going to throw it to you why this is an interesting topic to you.
It's a topic that's of interest to me because it's a reoccurring theme that keeps coming up in my life. This idea, when we say the wild holy, it's this search for me of the sacred within this world and the desire to encounter the sacred. So what I want to do in this podcast is kind of take a moment to honor and recognize where the holy shows up in these wild, unexpected ways in everyday life. And sometimes those ways don't look like we would imagine them to look. They don't show up in places we normally call sacred or holy, like churches or synagogues or whatever holy place there might be designated for a tradition. So I think that the goal for me of wanting to do this podcast is to really explore and identify and honor and cherish where the holy shows up in everyday life.
I love that, Faith, and you have such a beautiful podcast voice. I'm looking forward to listening to it as we have a conversation. Um,
Thank you.
it's true. It's true. Yes, yes, I feel soothed and educated at the same time. I think I would say for myself that I'm approaching this a little bit more as maybe as weirdly as a professional, given that I've done a lot of work in various settings over the years, and as a spiritual director, listening to people's stories and holding up a mirror to them of the sacred. First, just by virtue of listening, I don't think we can do, I don't think there's such a thing as too much listening to ourselves and others. And then the second thing is, it's often the case when I'm listening to people talk about their stories, and I mention, I even ask the question, like, where are you finding the sacred in the story that you've just told or in the day you've just had? And folks seem a little bit surprised by the question, even though often ostensibly that's what we're there to do, is to listen for the sacred. But I guess I'm interested in both the ordinary and extraordinary moments of the sacred in people's lives, and letting there be space in this podcast for, individuals who we invite on this podcast to share their stories, but hopefully also the listener, to find the sacred in their story, especially as we have noted in the unexpected places, quite literally sometimes places, but also the unexpected moments of their lives.
So these individuals that we'll be inviting on the show to talk with us about their holy encounters, what do you imagine they might be like?
Well, both you and I have a list of people that we're already looking forward to talking to. And I think as I think about folks that I want to invite on the podcast, I'm thinking about a friend of mine who's already said yes. And when we were talking about this, I invited her and she's like, that sounds like a cool idea. And she said, I don't know that I have anything to contribute. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I mean, you and I have talked about all these different topics in your life. And I mean, that's precisely the point I was making earlier, that people don't even recognize sometimes in their own stories, these kind of sacred, I think especially kind of hinge moments or transitional moments when maybe the sacred is calling them forward into a different way of thinking or a different way of being.
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily always see the sacred in that, but I do. And I don't need to or want to impose, my own ideas on anyone else. But
Mm-hmm.
I think of it as kind of an invitational call to see what has happened in their life as sacred, and maybe even being guided by the sacred in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a category of person I would say like sacred in the ordinary life, in the ordinary crises as well.
Yeah.
Because often we do experience the sacred or can experience the sacred in those moments of crisis and catastrophe where our worlds are falling apart and nothing that we believed was true seems to be true anymore. So that's one category of person I've been thinking about. And then the second category of person I think genuinely, maybe even for me, is a bit more wild. People who have stories that are beyond even the metaphysics of what we know to be true. People have really kind of glimpsed ultimate reality in its wildness and have maybe struggled or have had a process to integrate those experiences into their lives and into their pre-existing paradigms. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the kinds of people I'm thinking about. And Faith, I know you have
Yeah.
another set of people that kind of have
Mm-hmm.
resonated with your own personal story that you have in mind for us to talk with
Right.
too.
Well, I think that the people that I have in mind come from just natural interactions in everyday life that I've met because, through the course of just recognizing that we've had the same struggles and same experiences. And because I came from a very conservative evangelical tradition and grew up in that and experienced all the wonderful things that came from it. One of them being a strong and a profound experience of God that resides with me still. But then also realizing that that tradition has a lot of limitations. Being a woman and moving into a space of confidence and acknowledging the authority that I have on my own life and my own experiences. There were some unhelpful things put on me. Going back to the kind of person that I hope to speak with and that I've encountered naturally, it's other individuals who have also left a more conservative, rigid tradition, perhaps. So those are the kinds of people that I would probably, naturally be drawn to, naturally invite to discuss things with us here.
Well, I'm excited. I love talking to people and listening to people, and I'm really excited for the people that we will be able um, to listen to during the course of our season. And one of the things that I was thinking as you were talking about where you're coming from is just how much I think embedded in the spiritual journey are precisely the things we're talking about, meaning that so much of the spiritual journey to me is about allowing ourselves to see the truth of our own experience, even as it might be conflicting with traditions or beliefs or ideals that we've held, and
Mm-hmm.
to allow our own experience to be wild,
Yes.
to be wild and holy. And that is life itself, I think, actually, not to be too
Mm-hmm.
philosophical here, but I think that is life itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really looking forward to hearing almost like a mosaic of stories as this season
Mm-hmm.
unfolds. And I am really hopeful because I see this podcast as being both a service to us, but hopefully also a service to the people who are listening, that
Mm-hmm.
they find themselves in the stories that are told. And I'm really looking forward to that. Both you and I have wanted there to be more space for these kinds of stories, ordinary and extraordinary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think it gives, again, going back to one of the goals I feel of the podcast is to identify these moments and, like you said, to show others that there's a shared experience there too. Like you can identify and find resonance with what other people are sharing in their experiences. And yet, also, I hope what the listeners will find is that there's also permission to have your own experience be your own experience. Because if nothing else, encounters with the divine are very
Mm.
personal and intimate. And deeply touch you as a individual person. So they're going to be unique, just as each of us are unique and have unique journeys, different life stories, different current circumstances. So yes, there's going to be all of those things. And I think, like we were discussing the other day, that one hallmark of the sacred is finding those paradoxical moments where we're going to find that both there's similarities and yet there are wild differences. And that is okay, and that we can hold all of that together and learn from it.
Absolutely. And I was thinking too that I think you and I are holding up maybe different poles like of mystery. I
Mm.
just having known you for a while, I think you really do a beautiful job of holding up the pole of mystery, which is that there are mysterious things and there are things we don't understand or we can't always assimilate, process, integrate into our lives. And
Mm-hmm.
like holding up that sort of side of sacred mystery. And I think I was thinking about I really love the Richard Rohr idea that mystery is endless knowability,
Hmm.
not N-O, but K-N-O-W, that mystery has a quality to it, which is not like we can never know the thing, but rather that the thing is endlessly knowable and
Hmm.
that more truth is revealed to us as the layers unfold, as the sometimes layers are peeled back and
Yeah.
we see more and more truth.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a description of a dynamic interaction relationship, one that's always ebbing and flowing and moving and changing, and where all parties involved are always changing and adjusting, and I think that's a really good way to look at it. It's not a static, non-changing thing.
So Faith and I are really looking forward to our conversations with each other, with others this season. And we are so looking forward to everything that is to come. So thank you for joining us for the Wild Holy podcast. Anything else you want to say, Faith?
Well, I was just thinking, it just came to mind. One other thing we should mention is where people can find both you and I on the internet, because we both have little spaces. So maybe you could share yours and I'll share mine, and then we can say goodbye.
So you can find me at brightsoul.org, and you can also find me on Instagram at brightsoulpath. And you, Faith.
Yeah, so you could find me at calliopesnest.com. Calliope is the Greek muse of creativity. That's where I invoke her presence. And you can find me on Instagram at Calliope's Nest as well. So great. I'm so glad you guys could join us for this episode, and really looking forward to more conversations with you, Stephanie, and our guests.
Me too, Faith, and blessings to everyone.